Welcome to the Entrepreneur Insider Secrets podcast. Excited to spend some time with you again today, talking about things that are important to you and your business. Today, we're going to be talking about building a business that reflects your values and not just market demand. Now, this is one that I think is a really interesting topic because a lot of times in things that we talk about, there's a right and there's a wrong. There's a yes and there's a no. There's a clear black and a clear white. This one is not so much that type of topic. This is more of a both and type situation. Now, what do I mean by that? Obviously, if you're building a business, if you're going to go do something, it's only going to work if there's actual market demand for what it is that you do, correct? If you start a business and no one is interested in what it is that you're offering, there's going to be an issue. There's going to be a problem because no one's going to buy. No one's going to do it. And you're not going to be in business for very long because you don't have customers and there are no customers coming. So market demand is obviously an important factor and an important thing to take into account when you're building a business. But there's something else that needs to be brought into the equation. And that's why I say this is a both and scenario. The other side of the equation is that the work that you're doing needs to also reflect your values. What is okay with you? What do you care about? What are the things that are important to you? Where is your heart? What is it that you really want to do with your life? What are the things that you really care about? Those are things that need to be incorporated into the process. Otherwise, this is going to fall apart and this is going to run into a problem. And there's this balance and there's this fear that goes into all this because you have a scenario where you feel like, well, this is what I got to do to pay the bills. This pays the bills. This gives me money. This gives me an income so I can pay the rent or the mortgage. I can buy groceries. I can, pay for gas. I can take care of the things that I need to pay for in my life. And so I'm just doing what I have to do. And to a degree, we all have to do things like that, right? We all have to do work. We all have to do certain things that maybe we don't want to do. Maybe we don't want to get involved in those things because we're like, hey, this isn't what I want to do, but it's how I survive. It's what I take on to be able to take care of myself, my loved ones, and so forth. And yet there's a friction point in there, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want to talk about with all of this is that just focusing on what the market is interested in, the demands of the market, what pays, quote unquote, without incorporating your values is going to lead to misalignment that it will eventually lead to breakdown. Now, let's talk about this. One of the first things that comes to my mind wasn't actually during a time of my life when I was starting my own business. This was before those days when I was still working for other organizations. This was during the time when, excuse me, sorry about that. This is during a time when I was coming out of the years when I was a stay-at-home dad. Now, many of you know my story, there was a stretch of my life. I worked in banking for a number of years out of college. That was where my career kind of got started and where it went. Then I met my wife, and we quickly ended up with 3 children because we had a daughter, and then 2.5 years later, we had twin boys. So suddenly we're kind of swimming in the little kids in our house, and it was overwhelming for us to try and both work full-time jobs, take care of a house, and have 3 little children all the time. And so it came to the point where we knew something had to give, and I really kind of felt in that time in my heart that I was, the company the bank I worked for wasn't in great shape. I didn't see a lot of a future there. And so I kind of bit the bullet and I'm going to be the one to stay home with the kids because one of us needs to. The company that she was working for was more stable, had a better future and so forth. And it just kind of was the circumstances that we found ourselves in. So I did that for a number of years, but then after a while, I, as the kids grew older, they didn't need me as much. And so now I'm entering this phase where I can actually start reintegrating back into work. I can start doing things, not full time yet, because I'm still largely a taxi cab driver to all the various activities that the children need to go to, but they don't need me the way that they used to need me. I'm just not, they're older now. They manage a lot more of their own lives. I'm not needed to be hand holding as much. So, and during this time, my wife actually got let go from her job. The job that we had moved to Columbus for, it kind of ended in a thud, and she got let go. And so now she doesn't have an income, and I've been stay-at-home dad for a while. So we need some money, obviously. We're in a situation where the income stream for the household is no longer there. And so we're both looking for jobs, trying to figure out we need to do something. And it was kind of a race to see whoever could come up with something first just to get some income coming in, because we were both trying to do something. And I met a guy that I went to church with, who said, hey, he knew me, and he was like, hey, you know what? We're looking for somebody to help us. And it's something that you could actually do from home, because he knew I was trying to help still kind of do a lot of taking care of kids and chasing, doing all that kind of stuff. So you could do this from home, actually. And what it was this was a manufacturing company, and they had a bunch of clients that they had a bunch of invoices that their clients hadn't paid. And they said, we just need somebody who can call on all these invoices. And they had a lot of invoices that were not paid. And they had a whole team of people that were like, we just need you to call and see if you get these invoices paid. And a lot of times it's just simply a matter of the invoice didn't go to the right person. It didn't get communicated to the right channel. Something got off. Maybe a person quit and somebody else took over, and we never found out about it. So and a lot of things like that. Other times the business is in trouble and they're just not capable of paying their bills. So if you could do that, we could pay you for that, and we could, you could do it from home, make the calls from home. That actually works. I could do that. And it wasn't my first job being a collections officer, but okay, here we go. And so I'm doing it. And, I have to go into the office for a few days for training. So they show me how to use the software that tracks all the stuff that we're doing, and to learn how to do everything. And one of the things they had me doing was they taught me how to do calls. And the guy that was doing my training was obnoxious. I'll just say it that way. He was really obnoxious. And his way of dealing with these people was to scream at them, and to just blast them to kingdom come about why they're not paying their bill. And what ended up happening, and so I'm going wow, you're really aggressive. You're just really, really mean to these people. You're really attacking them. And I am sitting there going, I don't want to be that mean to people. That I know I don't want to scream at everybody. And so I started, he started supervising me doing the calls so that I could get some experience. And I'm doing it, and he's getting upset at me because I'm not mean enough. And I'm going, dude, I don't want to scream at every person I talk to. That's a values mismatch here. I don't want to be that guy who just is, attacking everyone that he runs into. And yet he was upset at me. You have to do it. You have to do it. So I'm trying to get a little more aggressive and pushing it a little bit. And I still remember that week of training that I'm going through all these things, and I'm setting all this stuff up and learning and going through the whole process. I thought I made one of the worst mistakes of my life. I'm sitting here on the one hand going, this money is going to help support my family. It is going to help me keep our family afloat. And we don't have an income right now. My wife still has a little bit of severance, but that's not going to last forever. Clearly, it's only going to last a little while. And how else are we going to pay the bills? And I felt like I had to do what I had to do, that I didn't have much of a choice because we needed the money and I had to do. And this is what the market was demanding of me to get the money. It's what the market was saying. Well, this is what it has to be. You have to do this if you want to get paid. And I will still remember the day, and I was there in training still. And we took a lunch break, and there was lots of restaurants around. So I went to a place nearby and grabbed a sandwich for lunch. And I drove back into the parking lot, and it was, I needed to go back into the office for the afternoon. And I, for the first time in my life, felt frozen. Like my legs literally did not want to move and get out of the car. I am sitting in the car, staring out the front door to the office, going, David, you need to work. You need to get up, get out of the car, and walk into the building because it's time. Lunch time is over. You need to get back in there and get started making calls again. I physically couldn't move. I was sitting there frozen. And my mind and my body are just like at war with each other. My mind's like, David, come on, David, let's go. It's time to get going. It's time to get to work. And my body's like, no way. I am not going in there and spending another afternoon screaming at people. And finally, I just was able to like get my way past it because I was just in this internal conflict where I didn't want to go. I hated it. I hated doing it. I was like, this is horrible. These people hate me. Every time I pick up the phone and talk to somebody, they hate me because I am screaming. I'm being forced to scream at them. And so I managed to finally get myself back in there because I'm just like, you don't have a choice. Go, get your rear end moving, man. You got to go. This is the way it is. Your family needs this money. We have to have it because we have, 3 children. We got bills to pay. You got to go. So I finally got myself to go there and to do it. And I hated it. There was such a values mismatch that I was in my own little personal hell trying to get through this. And then what ended up happening is like after that week, they said, okay, you got it well enough. They gave me a laptop. They gave me one of those little sign-in token things. And they just said, okay, here's your list of clients. We get it all segregated for you. And there was a lot of them there. So I had weeks worth of calling. And your job is to just call these numbers and start seeing if you can get some of these invoices paid. And when I was at home, at first I was like, all right, I got to be mean. And then I quickly went and said, you know what? That guy's not here. That guy isn't sitting next to me anymore demanding that I'm being awful. I can actually do this my way. And so here's what happened is I started making calls, but I did them with grace. I would call up this person and say, hi, so-and-so, this is David with this company. And we have an outstanding invoice with you. And I just wanted to follow up on the status of it. And so they're like, okay, great. Well, here's what it is. And what I quickly learned was one of two things was happening. Either the company was in financial distress. They were in a situation where the company is going under. They have no money. And in that case, we're not getting this invoice paid no matter what. And most of these invoices were a few $100s. It wasn't like these were tens of thousands of dollars. So it's not worth getting a lawyer involved. It's just not big enough. And so you realize if their money's not there, and these people that I spoke to were like in need of therapy. The people that I spoke to were just like, I could almost feel them shaking on the other end of the phone. They were so rattled because they sit there every day and get screamed at by people who want their money. And they're the ones who have to take the brunt of it and tell everybody, we don't have any. We don't have any money. We can't pay you. And I'm sorry. And then they get screamed at by everyone because They're the ones caught in the middle. And I actually just realized nothing I do, no amount of screaming is going to change the outcome. No amount of screaming or yelling is going to make any difference to the situation whatsoever. And so I just started being nice to people because I felt sad for them. Because I'm like, you're getting yelled at and there's nothing you can do about it because you're just the employee who's trying to manage this as best you can. And you're just caught in the middle of the storm. And so I took the different approach. I'm like, because you know what? This is in alignment with my values. Treat people with respect. Be kind. Be reasonable. Be rational. And so I did that. I'm like, I don't care what that other guy who trained me says. So I don't think he lasted much longer in the job anyway. I think he actually, if I remember, either quit or got fired later on. I don't think he worked out anyway. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to see that guy anymore. But anyway, I started being just polite to the people. And I'm like, hey, I just want to check on the status of this. Is there, what's the story? We haven't gotten paid on this. Can you just, help me figure out what the situation is? And again, it was either the company's going broke, but the majority of the time, it was simply that the paperwork or the invoice didn't get to the right person. It got sent somewhere that was no longer the right place. And again, people come, employees go. Sometimes the employee leaves, and then they didn't know the employee left, so they're still sending it to the email address of the person who's no longer there. And like, oh no, just if you send it to this person, they'll get it taken care of and they'll pay it for you. Great. And I started just being really nice to people. And I could tell the responses that I'm getting back from the people on the other side started to shift. And I'm fully convinced that I got some invoices paid simply because I was so different from everyone else. Because I actually was being nice to them. And I would say, thank you so much. I'm so appreciate all your help. That's wonderful. I hope you have a great day. And these people, I swear, I bet we got our invoices. And then you have a few of those that are still able to pay invoices. But, it's a matter of prioritization. Like some of these are going to get paid and others are not. I'm pretty sure I got some of them paid because I treated them nice. And they said, you know what? I've just had 5 people call me up and chew me out. And I had one person call and be nice to me. I got a $5,000 to spend to pay invoices. I'm going to pay the guy that was nice to me first. And I'm pretty sure I got a lot of invoices paid that way. And it just so happens that it started to work, and it started to work so much better. Why? Because my values were aligned with the market. We're now doing things in a way that I'm aligning things. My alignment is now working. And at the end of my time working there, because this was not a forever job, it was like 3 months or so job. And by that point in time, my wife had found a different job, and the money I made covered the gap that we need. It all worked out perfectly. And I actually went in and said, okay, I can be done now. And they were very grateful. They knew all the way up front that I was brought in just to provide an extra set of hands. I wasn't going to be a full-time employee. I was just there temporarily to kind of take over some of the excess volume. And when I went in to turn in my laptop and to turn in my little token thingy, and I was talking to them, and I said, hey, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to work here. And the guy said, you know what? We had to figure out something. I'm going, what? He goes, we all of a sudden had a lot more cash flow than we were anticipating. I go, okay. And he goes, it took us a bit to figure out why. And I go, well, what was the reason? And he looked at me and said, you are the reason we had all that excess cash flow, because all of these people that you were calling are now paying. They're sending in their money for their invoices. Said you were incredibly effective at getting bills paid. And we all of a sudden had way more money coming in than budgeted because all these delinquent invoices are all of a sudden now no longer delinquent. They're going and getting paid. So this is where we have to understand, and this is something that I want to talk about next. And I realized that was kind of a long section there with the story, but I think it's important because it's important in our businesses as well. When you have a set of values about what's important to you and why you should do this versus why you should do that, your values are not a limitation. Your values are a strategic filter. And here's just what I want to say about this is that too many times we feel like we have to sacrifice what's important to us just to do the job, to get paid, and to earn an income. We feel like we have to sacrifice our values, what we like, what's important to us, so that, well, that's just what the job is. It's what the client demands, is what we got to do. Is it? I have another friend who, and I'll keep the information kind of vague here to protect my friend, but this friend worked for another company as well and was providing this type of service, and she really loved working in a level that was working with more the average level consumer, the everyday man, for lack of a better way of saying it. And the business that she had worked for was starting to shift their focus, and the focus was going towards serving much more wealthy level clients, wealthier clientele. Why? Because they can make more money on them. They could charge higher premiums. They could get more commissions. The income streams became a lot higher for them at that level, and they could kind of push aside the everyday man type person, and the wealthy client became the focus of everything they were doing because it was a profit generator. Okay, well, again, that's the market demand, right? You're running your business according to the market demand. The market demand is showing me that I can make more money here. But my friend was like, this isn't what I went into this for. And obviously, anyone who's worked with wealthy people knows that many of them are great. Many of them are absolutely fine and wonderful people, but a lot of them are also very entitled. They think because they can have money, they can throw a temper tantrum, and you immediately have to drop everything and serve them. That they become very, very entitled, and they become very demanding. And like, well, I'm spending all this money. You have to give me anything and everything I want. And it ruined her. It absolutely ran her straight into the ground, and she was exhausted and couldn't take it anymore. And she eventually quit because she was so burned out, and she realized she hated the work that she was doing. She hated the type of activity she was involved in because it no longer was in alignment with her values. So this is my final point, and this is where I want to leave you with throughout all these stories. Aligning your values with the demand of the market is how you create sustainable growth. If you want to have a successful business, if you want to have a successful career, both need to be factored into the equation. If you try and run a business that is selling things that really don't interest people, that are not what they want, that are not what they're looking for, that are not the answer that they're willing to pay for, you're obviously going to have trouble getting clients, and your business isn't going to go very far. But if you have to sacrifice who you are, your values, the things that you love, the things that are important to you, in order to get that client to say yes to you, you're not going to be in business very long, because you're eventually going to hate and resent your business. You're going to wake up one day and go, this sucks. I don't like it. I don't want to do this anymore. This does not make me happy. This is miserable. And you are going to want to hang it up and walk away, because at some point you're going to come to the realization that the money simply isn't worth it. The money is not worth being miserable every day of your life. You have to find a way to have that correct balance. In your business, as you're building things out, you need to first and foremost always understand What is it that the market wants? What is the market willing to pay for? What are things that that people are interested in paying me to help them with? Obviously, a critical decision in the process. That factor is incredibly important. But you also have to be willing to say, what am I willing to do to meet them? Both of those need to come together in the center, because what will happen is you'll get clients that come in and they'll pay you money, but now they think they own you and they can make you do anything, and they can run you in circles. They can take advantage of you, and they can just make your life miserable. And I've seen that way too many times. Even people who perform as consultants. And I remember talking to this lady once a few years ago. She was incredibly gifted and talented, and she was working for this company as a consultant and working on the side. And she was telling me all the different stuff, and she's exhausted. She has children at home. She has a husband. She has, trying to take care of her family, and she's working until 10, 11 o'clock every night. And I'm looking at her going, they don't have a consultant. They have a slave. You have not defined the parameters of what is acceptable and what you will and will not do for that business. And so as a result, they are texting you at 10 o'clock at night, expecting you to respond on the spot. That is a violation of your values and beliefs, and your values of respecting you as a human being. You are not their slave. They are your client, and you have to set boundaries. You have to set rules of engagement. You have to set the terms under which you will operate. And if they decide to go outside of those bounds, well, I'm sorry, I'll get back to you tomorrow. At 10 o'clock at night, I am not on call. They completely ran her over. It completely took advantage of her. So these are things that we have to be cognizant of. Yes, it's great to have clients, but the clients can't destroy us. The clients can't destroy our lives, and they can't ruin everything for us. We have to find a way to serve the clients, but also taking care of ourselves, taking care of our values, taking care of our needs. Some of that is your value has to be taking care of yourself. One of the core values has to be, can I do this in such a way that I'm not going to kill me? I'm not going to end up destroying myself to meet all of their needs. Especially some of these people, when they start paying a good amount of money, they think that they're entitled to anything and everything 24/7. And as a result, they don't care how much they run you into the ground. And that is a destruction of your values and a destruction of you, and eventually will lead to the destruction of the business. So I hope this is helpful to you. I hope that you're able to get a lot out of this. I hope you're able to see why this is not an either or situation. Like I mentioned early on, this is a both and. If you go out and only chase what makes you money, you're going to have a misalignment. Guaranteed it's going to happen at some point, because you can only do that for so long before everything inside of you locks up and says no more. Just like me sitting in that parking lot saying, I don't want to go in the door. I'm frozen. I don't want to walk. I don't want to get out of this car and go through those front doors and go back to work this afternoon, because this is horrible. And when you can do that, when you can bring your values into it, when you can align your values with the work that you're doing, with the clients that you're serving, it brings clarity, it brings direction, and it brings sustainability. You now have the ability to last. You now have the ability to sustain your business, to sustain what it is that you're doing, because who you're serving is in alignment with who you are. And when those two are both on the same page, now we have magic. Now we have a business that can excel and succeed at a very high level. So, hope you got a lot out of this today. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Take care, everybody.